Yeah.
Jenny Turner, Lovejoy Real Estate. I'm so excited to talk to Chris today about his home bar and kind of all the opportunity and ways to be creative.
Thanks. As Jenny said, I'm Chris Magana, and this is our labor of love here in our house.
So what got you started? Like, did you wake up one morning and you're like, I need a bar, or what? Like, this is a serious commitment.
Yeah. So it's over 10 years in the making. It started because my wife and I used to play poker at this home game with a bunch of wealth managers and attorneys, and the deal was that if we won on Friday night, we would go buy a nice bottle of whiskey or tequila on Saturday. So we won a lot. So we ended up with...
it was a good deal.
Yeah, it was a very good deal. We played in that game for about 5 years. And me being me, I had a spreadsheet, my win rate, how much, what our take rate was from the game. And so
I'm surprised they let you play that long if you kept winning.
Well, like booze, gambling is addictive.
Point taken.
So it started actually at our other house with this bar top,
okay.
Which also had a green top. Then I've had the top taken off to match the top spec here. And it started with 10 bottles or 15 bottles of like $50 bourbon or whiskey, that $100 bourbon or whiskey, and then over the years we've morphed it into this. And kind of the reason for it, it's really about fellowship for us. We enjoy hosting parties. We enjoy hosting people. And what I found was that, Portland is blessed to have some of the best, actually, whiskey bars in the country. But you pay for it.
Right.
So you go to the Multnomah Whiskey Library, you can spend $400 or $500 on one glass of bourbon. And I said, well, this is silly. I can spend $1,000 to buy the bottle.
Right.
And I can share it with 18 friends or family members, right? So it ended up being a thing that started as a few bottles here and there, 50 or 60 from playing poker, and then slowly over time we built it into this. And so the other kind of ritual that we have is that when we go to another country, we tend to bring back a bottle or two so we find some local spirits from wherever we're at, and try to bring back a
Charles
bottle.
and I do exactly the same thing. If we're traveling, we try to buy a local bottle of gin. In our case,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
Same idea.
I've got some wonderful dry gin for me from London that you'll never find again. It's beautiful.
See, yeah, there you go.
So it's turned into this, and the other piece of it, it's been actually a really big. COVID was hard for a lot of reasons for all of us, right? But I started doing virtual tastings for charity. Which was kind of fun. And one of the groups that I just put it on, there's lots of forums on Facebook and other places to kind of meet other degenerates that are into whiskey.
Yep.
And one of the groups stuck. So we get together about every month virtually, and we've actually done a few live ones. And we get together, and now it's just about fellowship and friendship, and but it's a really cool group of guys. And I mean, honestly, it was one of the few things that really kind of pulled me through COVID, because
that connection.
Yeah, because this was
connection.
completely shut down, and the whole point of this is to share it with friends and family, and help our friends and family experience spirits and booze that they wouldn't get to.
Is whiskey your favorite? Like, is that your go-to?
You can edit this out if you want, but actually, I'm kind of I ebb and flow, but right now I'm on a rosé kick. So I think
that's kind of the one end of the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's kind of funny too, because if we are out and about and I order like, you got a sparkling rosé that's kind of dry? They're like, what? And
I don't think you should feel judged for that. I think that's a perfectly good order.
We're all insecure about something, and that's
Right.
that's one of my
true.
insecurities.
If we're out, like if I'm home, I'm much more of a wine drinker.
Okay.
But if we go out, I tend to order like a Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because you
Great
can't drink a Manhattan very fast.
Yeah.
Like, it's a sipping drink.
Yep.
It like takes longer. Like, it's just a good, like, I have it at the table for a while.
Yeah.
And so that's if I'm going out. Plus, I don't usually I won't make a Manhattan at home. I mean,
Okay.
I know I could, but I just, like, it's much easier to open a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And so I don't. How many bottles do you have? Do you know?
So in the collection here, so the other thing that drives me crazy about, there's a lot of people that I know that have actually a lot more bottles and a lot bigger selection, but they treat it like it's a museum. It's like, see this bottle of blah, 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 blah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm like, great, let's open it and let's share it and let's talk. No. This isn't for drinking. They treat it like it's a baseball card or Beanie Baby. And
This is more about the experience for you.
this is
You're
about
not
fellowship,
saving it yet.
friendship. When the bottles are done, that means we've had some great conversations with some great friends and family, made
Yeah.
some new friends, because that's what it's about. So there's only 2 bottles that are kind of exempt, and they're actually not even that expensive. One, I only drink it once a year on my friend's birthday who's passed away, and it's
You're
just for
honoring
me.
him. Yep.
It's for me and him to share. And then I had a friend that just had a kidney transplant, and I'm waiting for him to get healthy enough to crack a bottle of 15-year Pappy that I said.
A special thing
Yep,
that once he can
yep.
do it.
Yep. But everything else is, if somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I've seen that, but I've never actually, I can't afford it, or I can't break my spouse would kill me," pull it off the shelf. Let's drink
have a
it.
drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't mix it with Coca-Cola, but let's have a.
You have some standards.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so it's all to be shared. But circling all the way back to your question, there's probably about here's just a few hundred bottles, but in this is the liquor locker behind here,
Okay.
and there's another probably 500 bottles there, and then I have bottles in about 11 different states right now with friends that were. And
Is that because it's when you visit them there you drink it, or
No,
you're just sharing it with them?
it's their so every state allocates liquor differently, and they have different rules and different allocations. So certain things you can find in Oregon or Washington you can't find in other states. Ohio and Texas, for example, you can find all the Weller you want, which is kind of coveted right now.
Okay.
But out here, it's much harder to find.
So friends there have bought it for you.
And then you do the switchy, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, as soon as I find a bottle of B.H. Taylor, which we can find pretty plentifully out here on the West Coast, I'll send you a couple bottles, and then you send me a couple bottles of whatever I'm looking for. It's been a great way to make friends too.
Absolutely.
And it's also kind of a little bit of a Carmen Sandiego, like, who do I know in this state who's willing to like drop everything and run to the liquor store across town for me?
Yep. And pick it up.
Yeah,
Yep.
so it's kind of fun, and it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt. And
During COVID, I moved our bar. And
Okay.
moving our bar included like taking everything off and cleaning it and doing all these things. And I counted the bottle of unique gin because Charles mostly has a gin collection. And same thing, we drink it. Like it's not like a coveted. It's you can walk in and drink any bottle like it's nothing special.
Yep.
Mostly different, all these different kinds. 102. He had 102 different bottles of gin.
that's good.
Which felt like a lot until you say like 500. So now I feel just fine. I think we could buy some more gin. But
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I actually don't drink that often. The only time I really drink, like I'm not one of those people like, oh, you must, come home after a hard day's work and have a cocktail. I'm like, no, not really.
it's more about the entertaining for you.
It's usually when I have friends over or family, and so I could live to be 400 years old, and I don't think this is going to get through because
Right.
we just don't have that many people over anymore. I used to host a party every year. There was like 100 people in the house. Cops would usually get called. Thankfully, some of them were my friends. Like, come over after your shift. But yeah, so we don't go through it nearly
I
as
think
much.
a lot of us got out of practice in COVID entertaining and being social too.
For sure.
Like I'm having to really make an effort,
For
and
sure.
I'm choosing to make that effort. Like we're choosing to be more social, like especially, and just holidays make it a little bit easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm choosing to reach out to people because I kind of just got easy not doing that.
Yeah.
And we work hard, hours are long, and so then it's like, no, I'm tired. But it's important. That connection with people is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so the other kind of cool piece of this, which I didn't get it all put together until after therapy and other kind of enlightenment. But what I really love about whiskey, and it's the same thing. We haven't talked about this, but I'm actually a bigger tea nerd than I am whiskey nerd.
Okay.
But what I love about both is just the legacy aspect of it, or the amount of time. Like a whiskey distiller, if they have a normal life expectancy, will only probably get through 3 expressions of their whiskey before they retire or die.
Because it takes that long.
It takes that long, right? And the same with tea. Like, good Chinese tea, the trees are 500 years old or older, and it's just the amount of time. And I love that aspect of it. The same way I just feel like I'm close to Mother Nature or God or whatever you believe in when I'm around giant trees, right? It's just like this thing will outlive all of us and has been here for
That legacy.
so long.
Yeah.
It's an aspect of whiskey and of tea and giant trees that is it's just so overwhelming for me. I love it. To think about like those rhetorics up there, which aren't particularly amazing, but
The bottle's beautiful.
they've been there. They've been sitting in a barrel in Kentucky for 25 years. You think about all the life and all the ups and downs of the economy, good and bad presidents, and all the things that have happened in 25 years, and it's just amazing to me. And so it's something that if I do drink alone, or if I'm drinking kind of, in a moment of solitude, like I think about that. I think about all the permanence of this, right?
Right. It's not just a fast, easy thing. Somebody really put some thought through it.
Yeah,
And commitment to it.
It's kind of the opposite of YOLO Friday night, let's shoot fireball, like
Yep.
woohoo! Like no, it's like, man, this is somebody took the time, and the corn farmer spent years dedicating to that corn, and then the distiller sourced the right corn, and they found the right water and the right lime, river, and like it's just
all those detailed matter to make it what it is today.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful process.
So, on the evolution of the bar,
Yeah.
you started with the front. What walk me through the rest? Like, what else was important to you? What else, like, why did you put it here in your house? Like, what, like...
Yeah. So when we were house shopping for this house, our realtor thought we were crazy, I'm sure, because we would walk straight into the bar. We would walk straight into the house, and my wife would say, "This is not going to do," and my wife is very chill about everything, right? And the realtor's like, "Oh, well, what's wrong?" And she's like, "Well, where's the bar going to go?"
I understand.
Because my wife and I both kind of share the same values around people and fellowship and friendships, and so I'm sure the realtor just thought we were nuts, and yeah, so we wanted something in order to be kind of front and center, which made it really awkward around when my daughter was young, and she'd have slumber parties or whatever, and the parents would come drop little Johnny or little Sarah off, and they're like, "What is this? Like, is this some like bougie frat house?" And I'm like, "No, the ironic thing about that is my daughter was in prevention club, didn't touch booze. I finally got her come to the dark side as a 27-year-old adult, but
Not something you had to worry about.
no, and I always told her like, this is terrible, but I'm like, do not do what a lot of kids did and like fill bottles with water. If you or your friends get like, don't do that. That's what I'm gonna be furious about.
Yeah, we're just entering, because Ryan's 15.
Yeah.
So we're just entering that world of like managing and like, do we need to lock up our like wine and liquor, and like we're not, and he's a good kid, so like we won't, but like friends also, and like what are we gonna like? It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing, and I don't know how I deal with that today, but it's one of those things that some I've seen people who draw lines on it and stuff like that. I'm like, don't waste the good liquor.
Yeah,
but
I think sometimes you have to trust your kid too.
Yeah,
right.
For
like
sure.
Depending on the kid.
For sure. Yeah. So the evolution of the bar, it really came. I mean, I just as a whiskey nerd, I'd go to different bars. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. So I wanted it to be kind of like a classic bar. So that's where kind of the cherry finish and the brass finishes came from. I wanted the top to match there, so we busted the top off, and my contractor at the time said, "Ooh, I don't know if this is going to work."
It looks custom.
Yeah,
yeah.
So it worked. And as a whiskey bar, this isn't a wet bar. I don't have an ice maker. I don't have I don't have water or anything, because this is meant to be a whiskey bar particularly, but we tequila and cognac and other stuff, which is meant to be drunk with maybe an ice chip, but mostly neat, right? Just with the spirit. So yeah, we didn't run any plumbing or anything like that. And I wanted something. I like this kind of grating, so we use this chicken wire.
I like that.
Finish there, and the problem I'm running into is some of these shelves have so much weight on them that they're starting to bow. Which is, my wife keeps saying, you either need to drink it more or give more of it away. So
it'd be a shame if it crashed down.
Yeah, right? For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if you could put the shelf back in the other way.
I'm thinking of flipping them. Yeah, I'm thinking of doing that.
At least then, because like it would take a while for it to like get back to even, then.
Yeah. So that's kind of the origin. You know, and the other piece of this is, you know, I want to support like local artists and things like that. So this piece right here is from a local chef artist friend of mine.
Interesting. It's very striking.
Yeah, and I had him commissioned. It's I guess technically it's commissioned, but underneath here you can't really tell unless you look real carefully at certain spots. This is not canvas. This is Wall Street Journals.
Oh.
So as a financial nerd, I'm like, I want you to do it on Wall Street Journals. And so that was a beautiful piece, so
I can't really tell, but I like it's neat to know that.
Yeah. And so the other cool piece of it, which gets us in a little bit of trouble too. So my last name is Magana. My wife's goes by her maiden name, Cito. And so we call this the S&M Lounge, right?
That gets you in trouble? I don't know why.
Well, so here's a couple little funny ones, right? So my neighbor, who's, you know, fairly conservative and nice guy, and he comes over to me and he says, hey, we got some kinky neighbors. Like, somebody's Wi-Fi says S&M Lounge. And he's like, you got any ideas who it is? And I said, yeah, Sam, it's us. Like, you come over to our house all the time. You hear us say S&M. We've got a logo built on pint glasses. Yeah. He's like, really? I'm like, yes, Sam. Cito Magana Lounge, because we have a bar. Yep. Oh, I never thought of that. Done some group texts over the years where I'm like, hey, anybody wants to come have happy hour on the deck? Meet at the S&M Lounge after 5 o'clock on Friday. Cool. People that I didn't know nearly as well would say, I spent an hour looking for this S&M Lounge. I went to a couple of restaurants. I stopped a cop and said, do you know where this bar is? Because I can't find it anywhere. Yeah. So over the years, it's kind of been funny. It's been funny with that. Yeah, so, I mean, it's just kind of built over time. I don't know where it'll go next. At some point...
I was going to ask you if it was still, is it still in progress, or do you feel like it's done?
I think it's pretty much done, in my opinion. I think it's kind of maintenance now, and then just finding ways to share it.
So when you went to do this, did you hire a general contractor to come in? Did you kind of have an idea already, like a vision already with what you wanted? How, like, from a practical perspective, how did you get started with the construction side of it?
Yeah. So we did. We spent, you know, I had spent kind of 5 years in my head having pictures, sketching things out.
Thinking about it.
I had an Evernote folder which kept all my kind of stuff aggregated in one spot for all the things I'm like, when I'm ready, this is what I'm going to do. And then I have a good contractor that I showed him kind of pictures and sketches and all this stuff and kind of showed him what I'm looking for. And he, you know, put together a few drafts, a budget, and so we worked on it very collaboratively. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's still a few as you do any kind of home project. There's a few things that you notice. You're like, that drives me crazy.
But no one else would ever.
But
see.
Nobody else knows,
Totally.
or they're like, really, like that's your complaint.
Yeah. And it's built in, right? Like, this is not freestanding. This is all attached to walls. It's built in.
Oh yes. It's insured. It's got a special writer, and yeah, it's all that. Yeah, I mean, you can spend an absolute fortune. I know people that have spent close to $100,000 just building out their home bar. You can spend any amount of money.
By the way, no resale. Just in case you're curious.
Oh yeah, no.
Right? You do it because it's a passion.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've thought of that because my wife and I have, you know, we've flirted with, you know, with Zillow and Redfin and all that stuff. It makes it easier to like, well, what if we just moved over here? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what would they do with this? Would they like display dishes, or they're
You would make more money
tearing it out? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I've come to the conclusion.
Unfortunately, right? And that's just the balance from real estate of like the broader the market, right? And this very narrowly shrinks it. Now, do I love it? Of course. When we remodeled our house, our plans had one of the rooms were labeled bar room. Yeah. And the city rejected our plans because they said you can't have a room labeled bar. And I'm like, but that's what's going in the room. And they had to call it an office.
Office
but it has a bar
room or something.
Yeah.
So you know, I think what I would recommend to anybody who's kind of who's starting on this kind of, you know, labor of love is just to be really curious and think about some of your favorite places to drink spirits and how you drink spirits. Whether it's I like to nerd out making cocktails, or if I like to be in large groups or small groups. What kind of atmosphere do I like? Do I like kind of dark wood and environment, or kind of modern contemporary, what I consider like LA type of bars, and and then just really kind of start like thinking about what things you really like about, and what's going to make you comfortable, and whoever you plan to have with you, assuming.
And some of that affects, like, do you need water or not, right?
For sure.
Do you want to have does it need to be a wet bar, or can it be portable?
For sure.
Or could you start smaller, right? Like, because even you said you started just with the front part.
Yep.
And that was probably a couple of years at least, right? Before you went bigger and grew through that.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of this by itself was kind of step one. And we found this at City Liquidators in Portland. It had a giant crack in it. And it was like, I think it was retailed for $1,000, and we got it like $400 because of this giant, piece that was screwed up. And then the shelf, the original shelving was 2 bookcases we got from Costco that were like $199. They had one little light on the top, and they had a little silly little touch thing behind there, so you could like dim them. And that's how it started. So I mean, all in, the original was, I think this was like, 500 or whatever, and then the 2 bookcases. So we were in for under $1,000.
Right, to start.
Yeah. And then when we did the big remodel about 6 years ago, that's when we spent a lot more. I never even told my wife, so I don't want to put that out.
It's totally fair. Your secret's safe with me.
Thank you,
I would never share.
Thank you. You could waterboard me, but I'm not telling. But it was a lot more than the $1,000 we spent getting it started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and if you moved, I mean, obviously this is built in, but you could probably take some of it apart and salvage it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Right,
sure,
like that
sure.
that could also be part of it.
Sure.
But that's something that I think is really important, because like we focus on resale, right? Because I'm in real estate and that's what I do. But your home should be personal. Like, it should be what you want it to be.
Yep.
And I like that you thought about, you wanted it right at the front because this is where you entertain. This is what you do, right? And in my world, I mean, first off, my kiddo's still littler, right? So I didn't want it right front and center. So when we were designing our remodel, we made it so that like it's tucked in the back, it opens up and flows, but like I could close the door and you wouldn't know.
Okay.
Right? So it's just thinking about how you live your life and what you want to do. And like we don't use our bar room very much unless we're entertaining. And this is kind of a good reminder of like we should probably just like watch TV in there sometimes. Like it's just like, because we did it in a way that we love that space, but you don't think about it sometimes.
Right. Yeah, and the other piece for us is we're massive sports fans, and we have multiple different team season tickets, and when we're not physically at a game, we're usually watching them, and you can't really see it if you're on camera or whatever, but we have 3 TVs set up over here. And so this room is also meant, every Sunday and Saturday, there's usually people here watching a game, or at least before COVID.
Yeah, cheering.
And so the bar made sense for this room to be.
Absolutely.
It's funny. We had a appliance handy person come in last week, and they're like, "Oh, I love your man cave right up front." And my wife sternly corrected him. It's a woman cave.
Right.
So it's all built around fellowship, friendship, celebrating sports, and good spirits, kind of all in the name of that.
Well, I think that's something that COVID's really taught us, that our home needs to be comfortable.
For sure.
It needs to be a place that like we can do the activities that we want to do. And sometimes that means you need to move things around and rearrange and do some things to like live in it like you really want to live in it. Right? Jenny Turner with Lovejoy Real Estate. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Real Talk. Please listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Thanks for visiting the bar. Look me up. I always like to make new friends, and come by and have a drink with me. Cheers.